This is a demonstration of how I recycle my clay. First, I'll siphon off all the standing water that's accumulated in the top of the bucket. I like to use one of these big syringes to do that, because it sucks up the water and leaves the clay where it is. When I've got rid of most of the clear water, I'll then use a hand blender tool to whiz up the rest of the clay and the remaining water that's in the bucket. I'll then use a 60 or an 80 mesh sieve to sift through the clay slip that I've just made. I never used to do this, but I found I had a lot of debris left in my clay that must have fallen into my reclaim bucket, so it's really a worthwhile step to do. You can see all the debris left at the bottom of the sieve here. Once I've sieved my way through the entire bucket of slip, I'll pour it out onto a plaster bat like this one. I'll raise up the plaster bat using some stilts from my kiln. This means that there's airflow underneath it. This helps the reclaim dry much quicker. You can even use a fan and direct a flow of air over your reclaim. This will increase drying time dramatically. The consistency of the slip should be like thick custard. Spread it out over your plaster bat as evenly as possible. Now you want to leave your clay to dry for a good few days, coming back to it when it's more of a solid than a liquid. At this stage, it's still quite wet, too wet to work with. So I'm going to scoop it up using a rubber kidney, making it into a kind of log shape, and then leaving it to dry for another few hours. To ensure your reclaimed clay is a really good consistency, you want to include your throwing water as well as your trimmings into your reclaim bucket. This makes sure that your clay is really nice and plastic and doesn't crack. Once it's the consistency that I like it, I'm going to come back and I'm going to wedge it. And I'm going to wedge it really well. This will get rid of all the air bubbles that were put into it during the reclaim process. I use the slam wedge method. I cut the clay in half, take the top half, and I slam it down onto the bottom half. This drives all the air bubbles out of the clay. I'll do this about 50 times or until I can see all the air bubbles have gone. Finally, I'm going to use the spiral wedging technique. This helps to homogenize the clay and make all the moisture in the clay even throughout the body. Spiral wedging is tricky and takes a lot of practice to get right, but it's worth investing in the time because this technique is the quickest way of homogenizing your clay and making sure that the moisture is even all the way through. I will do at least 100 spirals of my clay to make sure it's ready so that I can use it again. And that's it, it's ready to use. You'll find more pottery tutorials over in my Pottery Club. Check it out on my Patreon page. Thank you so much for watching.